I always come back to the Tudors. I've written about other periods. I've written about, everything from 1066 to the present day. But the Tudors for me have the X factor. They're really special. There's so much drama, larger than life personalities. And it's a really transformative period in English history. So, yeah, they always keep me coming back for more.
What's the favorite book you've written about them? What was the one where you learned the most, really?
I mean, this is going to sound like I'm just plugging my latest book, but it genuinely is Anne Boleyn and Elizabeth I because it was a huge journey of discovery for me. I had an inkling that there was a lot to say about their relationship, but until I started my research, I just didn't know for sure. And then it was like a treasure trove, uncovering all these little clues about mother and daughter, how each influenced the other and shaped the destiny of each other. So it really did feel for me like I'd met these two famous Tudor queens for the first time.
Exactly, and I think that you've done such a great job at showing this. Can you tell a bit more how, because there's this misconception, right? I mean, we know that Elizabeth never referred to her mother, da 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 da, all of this. There's still lots of myth around Anne Boleyn that are driving me absolutely nuts. I'm sure you're the same. But like, can you tell us like what are the main things that you found that were most extraordinary about their relationship? Because even it's just 2.5 years together, it's 2.5 years.
Yes, exactly. And that was really formative. Clearly Anne doted on her daughter and this is what surprised me. She flew in the face of royal convention by insisting on keeping her daughter with her. From the moment of her birth. And that wasn't usual. Henry VIII didn't know what to do with that, especially when Anne wanted to breastfeed Elizabeth, and he did put his foot down there. But she had her place next to her on velvet cushions, and one ambassador said, day and night, she will not let this daughter of hers out of her sight. So it's clear there was a close bond. But I guess the real impact of the relationship would be felt later when Elizabeth had grown to adulthood, years after her mother had been executed. And that's when you really see her develop this intense loyalty to Anne and a burning desire to rehabilitate her and put back Anne's reputation where it should have been all along as this formidable woman and this great intellectual and religious reformer and everything else that Anne Boleyn was. So I think the strength of that bond really surprised me. And like you, I get frustrated by the myths about Anne Boleyn, but in particular, so many people quote to me, "Oh, Elizabeth only mentioned Anne twice," and that's not true. But also, it was about actions more than words for Elizabeth. I'm pleased you said that, Estelle, because that's exactly what I aim to do with this book, and indeed other books I've written. I like to strip away really the public image, the royal kind of majesty, and look at the person underneath. And that was particularly the case with this book because yes, of course there are politics at play here, and Anne Boleyn wants people to respect her daughter because it's essential for her own position. But then you see the personal touches, and that the very last thing Anne does on earth as queen is to order presents for her daughter. So Elizabeth is in her mind to Anne's last breath. And I think that was also behind her very complimentary speech about Henry on the scaffold, when you might expect Anne to have really ranted and railed against the injustice of her fate. But instead, she praises Henry. And I think she has Elizabeth very much in mind there. She wants him to be kind to the daughter that he seems to be utterly forgetting, even now. So loyal to them. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. Of course, she goes on about her father in her public speeches because Henry VIII's memory is hallowed, and nobody will question her right to the throne through Henry. But the braver, more telling thing she does is to promote the Boleyns. So, as queen, she surrounds herself with her mother's relatives, both in her privy council and also in her privy chamber. So, both men and women from her mother's family find themselves in favour. It's pretty much impossible to get a job at Elizabeth's court unless you're related in some way or have some association to Anne Boleyn. I think again, actions more than words with Elizabeth and her mother. Yes, in public, she's always speaking about Henry VIII, but look at what she actually does. And that tends to be more about Anne Boleyn.
I
Absolutely.
think your book is definitely groundbreaking. I think all your books have
Yeah.
bring something, to the table, like Crown Inspector, like everything you've written, like the private lives of the Tudors, and it's what you say. You love getting to the people behind the crowns, really.
Yes. Yes.
And I think you do such a great job. Do you have any tips or any things you can give us about what you're doing next, what you're
Ah,
working on?
it's a really pertinent question at the moment, because I am in the thick of finishing off my new book, which is actually fiction. So I wrote my first fiction trilogy a few years ago, set in the early Stuart court, all around the
I
Gunpowder Plot.
loved it. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much. This one is Tudor. I'm pleased to say I'm back on familiar territory. I can't say more than that, but
I
yeah,
can't wait.
watch this space.